Good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. During the last 3 years, MFHEA received an increase in requests for online provision in Malta. COVID-19 has accelerated the process to issue guidelines for quality assurance in this sector. In July 2020, a webinar was organized by MFHEA to introduce the main concepts of digital education. An online survey amongst licensed providers was carried out in 2020, and results were presented in a webinar. Eventually, we are here today to present guidelines for quality assurance for online learning providers, which will become regulations as from 1st October 2022. We start today's webinar with the first item on the agenda. I invite Dr. Rosen Kushkiri, Chief Executive Officer of the Authority, to do her introductory speech.
Three years ago, I could not have imagined that digital learning would become such a major aspect in education. We learned through the pandemic that more and more can be done online. Digital learning is evolving fast, and it is not slowing down anytime soon. The stance for the future is motivating in terms of what is possible. We experienced how connectivity and suitable digital equipment for learners and educators, for teachers, and for trainers were key enabling factors for effective digital education. As an authority, we want to ensure that further and higher education institutions are confident and skilled in using digital technology to support their teaching and adapted pedagogy. Leadership, collaboration, and the sharing of good practice and innovative teaching methods. Reinforcing European higher education is one of the priorities of the strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training. Quoting the Council resolution on a strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training towards the European education area and beyond, one of our priorities is establishing an agenda for higher education transformation with a focus on inclusion, innovation, connectivity, digital and green readiness, and international competitiveness, as well as fundamental academic values and high ethical principles, as well as employment and employability. Education and training are key for social cohesion, economic growth, and innovation. They are also a critical building block for a fairer and more sustainable community. Raising the quality and inclusiveness of education and training systems and the provision of digital skills for all during the digital and green transition is of strategic importance for Malta and the EU. The education and training system is increasingly part of the digital transformation and can harness its benefits and opportunities. However, it also needs to effectively manage the risks of the digital transformation, including the risk of digital divide, where certain people can benefit more than others. The digital transformation in education is being driven by advances in connectivity, the widespread use of devices and digital applications, the need for individual flexibility, and the ever-increasing demand for digital skills. Digital learning uses new technologies and various methods to help the education sphere evolve in a new way. The scope of how digital methods can be used for educational purposes is limitless, and it has some incredible benefits for students. Introducing technology to reform education is essential to advance certain development stages. Innovation is a fundamental tool with which to address a reversed reality. Technology is available to serve education. The responsibility to make the most out of technology for education lies with us as regulators, policymakers, providers, teachers, educators, and even parents. The aim of these guidelines for quality assurance for online learning providers in Malta is to guide further and higher education institutions to ensure quality provision of online education. The guidelines were developed following the deployment of an online survey to investigate the implementation of online courses and programs, quality assurance measures in further and higher education in Malta. The publication is a result of collaboration among many individuals and institutions. I would therefore like to thank all those who gave so willingly of their time, expertise, and dedication, in particular Mr. Martin Debattista, Dr. Ghania Zgheib, and the MFHEA team.
Thank you, Dr. Kushkiri, for the speech. I invite now Mr. Martin Debattista and Dr. Ghania Zgheib to do their presentation to introduce the guidelines for quality assurance on online learning.
Hello, good morning. I think ladies should go first. Good morning, Ghania. Ghania is connecting with us from outside Malta.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well this morning. I am Dr. Ghania Zgheib. I'm a professor of instructional design and technology at the University of Balamand. I'm also in charge of the Masters in Instructional Design. I have many years of experience in online teaching and learning, specifically in the United States of America, where I studied and worked before moving back to Lebanon. I'm really happy to be with you, and this project for developing the guidelines for online learning has been a very interesting project, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you the guidelines.
Thank you, Ghania. I'm Martin Debattista. I'm not a new name for many of you. I'm actually I said that there are some very familiar names in the list. I'm happy to have you in this webinar. For those who don't know me, I am a senior academic at the Institute of Tourism Studies, and I have been first preaching and then implementing e-learning for the past 20 odd years. I'm also a digital reviewer with the Malta Further and Higher Education Authority. I hope that today's webinar is fruitful. The intention is not for us to impose on you or to make you scared about what we're going to present to you. In fact, we've put in a lot of effort and a lot of our experience. These guidelines will not come into effect before a year from now, but it's good that we discuss. We want you to come up with your suggestions, your reactions, your ideas. We have plans for more focused training and seminars and webinars early next year. But today, please come forward in the first part. Yes, we're going to explain to you the guidelines, but then in the second part of the webinar, please, the floor will be totally yours. Please come forward. So I'm sharing the presentation. I'm going to present it in conjunction with Ghania. If there are any issues, please raise your hands. You should have the raise hands function. Okay, later on, there will be the possibility for you to also intervene via your microphone. So let's go.
Okay. For some reason, what I'm seeing is a small screen of the slides. I'm not sure why, Martin.
I'm sharing the full screen. I am in presentation mode.
So what I see all the videos.
Maybe it's how your teams is structured.
Yeah, it wasn't like that before. All right, that's fine. Okay, so thank you, Martin.
Yes, press on the slide and pin the presentation screen.
Yeah, maybe this is what I need to do. Yeah.
Yes. Pin my name, yes, so yes. Presentation is pinned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So I would like to start, Martin and I actually would like to start with a quick overview and some background about how we created these guidelines, how the process of the creation of these guidelines. As you know, last year in January, a survey by MFHEA was sent to you to gather information about your current practices and policies for online learning at your own institutions. And the survey actually looked at demographics, online course quality assurance domains, the challenges, barriers, enablers, and any other comments that providers had. We got 135 respondents for the survey, and using the results of this survey and the comments and the feedback that we have gathered from this survey, we created guidelines adapted from existing guidelines in Australia, in Europe, and other guidelines from MFHEA, and adapted them to the Maltese context. We took into consideration the challenges and the enablers that providers have been facing and developed the guidelines that you have already seen before. So the domains that have been established, the next slide, please, Martin. So the domains for quality assurance for online providers, resulted in 8 domains. Yeah, as you see in the document that you have: leadership and management, staffing profile, professional development, review and improvement, resources, student information, experience and support, assessment and integrity, learning outcomes, and curriculum design. We will be explaining each of the domains and provide further guidance for smaller and larger institutions. Question, can you hear me well? Because I see that I have bad network quality for some reason on my screen. You can hear me well. Good. Okay, so we can go ahead. So the first domain, which is leadership and management. Martin, do you mind please advancing the slide? Thank you so much. So the first domain deals with leadership and management. As you know, providing online programs or online courses requires a different approach, requires a different budget, requires a strategy, it requires people who can work on it and improve it and enhance it. Therefore, leadership and management in online learning plays a big role to provide a quality assurance. In this domain, the focus mainly is on a vision of the institution that includes online learning. So the vision of the institution shifts a little bit in online learning environments where online learning becomes part of it, because it's not only focusing on students in Malta, but rather students maybe outside of Malta. Also a strategy that includes quality assurance policy and quality assurance documents have to be evident in showing as an indicator that the leadership and management takes into consideration online learning seriously. In addition to that, a university or an institution, any higher education institution, should provide a managerial unit that supports faculty and staff in the online learning process. I'll be talking about this in the next domain in detail. The budget of the institution should also take into consideration all the costs that comes with online learning. As you might all have experienced during the pandemic or in regular online programs that you offer, you need technical infrastructure, you need training, you need systems, you need faculty, you need staff who can support faculty in this process. Hence, budgets have to be taken into consideration. And finally, an evidence that there is adequate cyclical reviews of online and blended programs that happen all the time. So these indicators, we will see them across domains. Some of them, we will see them across domains also. Next, Martin is going to share with you further guidance for large and small institutions.
Yes, besides the standards, we thought of giving further guidance, especially to the smallest providers. So,
yeah.
I think it's better now. Yes, my microphone. This further guidance is not intended only for the smaller providers, but we are aware that most of the providers in Malta are medium to small in size. We are not talking about the University of Malta or MCAST. They are the large providers, but the smaller providers need much more guidance and focused guidance. That was our intention. So for every domain, we have provided further guidance. I'm going to start with the first domain. Bring in external expertise. Being small means that you have very limited human resources. So bring in external expertise until you build your own capacity. Buy off-the-shelf or adopt established free open source software and services. We know that budgets are limited. There isn't the time and there isn't the expertise to have software developed specifically for your business case, for your organization. However, there is a lot of off-the-shelf free and open source software. This is freely available. It is tried, tested. Some of it is well supported, internationally supported, and therefore they are a very good choice. Key managerial posts needed in organization. You need to have someone in your organization who is responsible for e-learning. We are not saying that that person should be highly technical. We are not saying that that person should only be responsible for the managerial side, but that person should be the focal point for the management team for the implementation of e-learning. And our number 4 guidance is create teams, not hierarchies. It's very important. Teamwork is essential. There are administrative things to do. There's the financial side, there's the technical side, and there is the curriculum and pedagogical side. Therefore, there needs to be teamwork. And this is the further guidance for the first domain. Now on to the second domain. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. The second domain, as you see, involves staffing profile and professional development. And this is a very key domain in the online learning process and implementation. By this, we mean the people who are in charge of developing online programs and supporting the programs, which is faculty, staff, technical and pedagogical aspects of online learning. In institutions around the world, I know from the United States of America, for example, there are instructional designers or an instructional design unit that works with faculty to support them, not only in the technical aspect of online learning, but also in the pedagogical aspect. And many institutions have faced issues when providing online learning with a pedagogical aspect more than the technical aspect, because online learning pedagogy is different from regular face-to-face teaching. Therefore, there needs to be a unit, as Martin has said, and I have mentioned it before as well. There needs to be a unit, an instructional design or a managerial unit that deals with the design of online programs and courses that involves faculty in the process. Institutions should faculty should own the courses. Therefore, faculty are key players in the development of online programs with the help of these managerial units. Faculty professional development is also key. Institutions should provide evidence that faculty receive the right training to provide online programs and to develop online courses. Staff development is also a big part of online learning, because not only faculty provide online learning, but also staff support the faculty and support the students in the online learning process. Hence, there needs to be evidence that staff also are receiving the right development and training. As I mentioned before, technical and pedagogical aspects have to be taken into consideration. Doing online learning only through technology, taking into account only VLEs without teaching faculty how to use it in an effective pedagogical way lacks a lot, makes online learning experience weak and might not help students achieve their learning outcomes. And finally, ethical considerations have to be taken into consideration when developing staff and faculty, because as you all know, communication in an online setting requires netiquette, or a certain method of communicating where everything gets archived. So both faculty and staff need to receive training in terms of netiquette or ethical considerations in online learning. Martin will provide further guidance to this domain.
Yes, thank you, Ghania. So, what are our suggestions? Bring in educators first, not the tech people. This is very important because your business case is always pedagogy and curriculum, and therefore educators should come in first. Then you design what your programs, your courses, and then you see what kind of technology is needed to implement these courses, these programs, this training. You can also tap into EU and other funds. These are available. It would be a pity if you don't apply, at least try to apply and get hold of these funds at various levels. They could be at national level. They could also be at regional and international level. Communication with staff, especially the part-timers. This is very important. Being small usually means that you have a lot of part-timers who are rarely on campus, rarely come to your offices, and yet they deliver the major part of your courses. So communication is very important. Tap into free online courses. There are a lot of online courses. Some of them are known as massive open online courses, and these are provided by some of the best universities in the world. For example, through platforms like Coursera, edX, Udemy. In Europe, there are other platforms. There is the Open University in the UK. These provide these courses, okay, most of them for free, and your staff, especially the trainers, the educators, the tutors, can have continuous professional development from these courses. Obviously, not everything is free of charge, but most of these are free of charge as long as you don't require the official certificate. Then you pay for the certificate. Thank you. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. So the third domain is about the review and improvement, mainly of programs. As you know, not only in online programs, but also in any regular programs, review and improvement of programs is key to quality assurance, to ensure quality assurance. So in online programs, I want to emphasize the idea that the recent and the new technologies provide us with so many opportunities to collect data, to analyze it, and to inform our programs. So it's very important to take advantage of the technology that's out there, of the learning analytics and the data analytics that we gather from virtual learning environments and from learning management systems, because they tell us so much about student retention, dropout, engagement with material, progress. It's very important to add these to the review of programs that are online. So cyclical review and improvement processes have to be, institutions have to provide evidence that they do conduct these cyclical reviews and improvement processes. They have to be listed and mentioned somewhere in the institution. These programs have to be audited, and auditing can happen from internally from the institution or from outside the institution. There needs to be strategic and policy documents that do mention online learning and online programs. Staff have to be involved in all the process of the review and improvement, whether faculty or staff, both of them have to be involved in this process. Even student feedback that you gather during the program or after the program has to be taken into account when reviewing these online programs, not only in terms of curricula, but also in terms of teaching approach and teaching methods that have been used. The internal quality assurance policy should cover online and blended delivery as a routine implementation, because as I said, when we say online and blended, it uses a different approach and process to teaching. And we also advise institutions to take small steps. We understand that this is it's too much work to begin with when evaluating programs, reviewing them and improving them. But institutions are encouraged to take small steps into this process. And again, I emphasize the importance of using the data that you gather from virtual learning environments and learning management systems. The analytics tells us a lot about how our students are doing and what further improvements need to be made. Marta will provide further guidance about this domain. Martin, to you.
Thank you, Ghania. So what is the further guidance in terms of review and improvement? First of all, our idea is that internal quality assurance should not be part of the organization's management structure. Okay, this is an important point for us. Why? Because having a person who is both in the internal quality assurance department and also part of management could have an issue in giving the best feedback and delivering the best responsibilities in terms of quality assurance. And therefore, to avoid conflicts of interest, they should be avoided. Doesn't mean that the person entrusted with internal quality assurance should not be a member of staff of the organization. Yes, should be a member of staff, but should be at an arm's length from management and faculty. The second guidance is that feedback should be obtained regularly from all the partners. And by all the partners, we understand students, staff, management, and also external partners. And the staff includes both academic and non-academic staff. Everyone, since this is a multidisciplinary approach, we have the administration, we have management, we have educators, we have technical people, okay, managerial people, external partners. All these should provide feedback. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. And the fourth domain is the resources. We all know by now how important resources for online learning are. And by resources, we mean the material that we provide in our programs and courses, but also, I mean, the pedagogical, the educational, the content-specific and course-specific material, but also information and resources that students need during the program or before enrolling in the program. It's very important that the resources provided to students are interactive, meaning student-centered, not only an upload of lectures, uploading readings, uploading videos, but rather these resources have to be interactive and engage the students in the learning process. There needs to be hence a budget for infrastructure, whether software technologies that are needed, open educational resources that need extra subscriptions, technologies, hardware to create, let's say, videos. All of these require a budget, as I said in the beginning, in the first domain. I repeat it here as well. And the technologies and the resources have to be selected purposefully, meaning they have to serve an educational and pedagogical goal, not just because a technology is new or trendy, but rather the university has to make, or the institution, I'm sorry, has to make the case for this technology and the resources, not only pick technologies that are up to date without any pedagogical benefit. There needs to be clear policies for data usage, security, and intellectual property when displaying digital information. All of these have to be taken into consideration. When using third-party digital sources, the institution has to select them carefully. These digital resources have to be scalable, avoid vendor lock-in, and have a server-level agreement for maintenance and support by the vendor, because many of these technologies require follow-up, require support for faculty and for students. Institutions are also advised to use software that is cloud-based because it is more ubiquitous, meaning that the students and the faculty can access this software from any device that they have, instead of having it downloadable on their PCs or on their laptops. Resources have to be accessible for both students and faculty, and they have to be also accessible for future and current students. By this, we mean they have to be published somewhere online, because students cannot come to campus when they're learning online most of the times. So they have to be accessible in a place where students can find them on the website. Finally, web accessibility standards have to be adhered to. And we know that I think the shift to online learning, and institutions who have already been offering online learning have noticed that they might have students with certain disabilities. In the US, for example, all courses have to be accessible for learners with disabilities who are visually impaired, hearing impaired. There are certain facilitations for these students. So institutions have to take into consideration that these students with disabilities are being supported. Martin will provide further explanation about this domain. To you, Martin.
Yes, thank you, Ghania. So what about resources? You may have noticed that we have included cartoons in our slides, and the cartoons have a very relevant message they want to impart. This one, I've chosen it myself, and this is one of the most, my favorite cartoons. Why? Because it shows how really, it doesn't matter how much resources you have, but how you use them. And in fact, this man is trying to go over that wall. He has a lot of letters, but since he does not know how to use them properly, all those letters are not enough. In reality, he only needs one. Okay, so a lot of expense, a lot of effort, all down the drain. So that's the principle we are trying to give here as further guidance. Number one, outsource information technology if your organization is small. If you don't have the budget to have a fully fledged IT department, there is the possibility to outsource it. And when I say IT department, basically, it means that you have someone who takes care of your infrastructure, that you have internet on campus in your offices, that purchases the hardware and the software, installs it. That can be outsourced. Okay, there are companies in Malta that can provide such turnkey solutions and services. Use cloud rather than installing software and services on the local network. I trust that you know what cloud services are, and one of the major advantages of having cloud services is that you don't need to install software on your computers and having to update your computers and update your software all the time. Why? Because such basic software as even productivity suites, okay, like Microsoft Office or Google Docs or LibreOffice, they can be available online and also on your computers, but you can work online. Webmail, for example, it's a typical cloud service. Yes, you can install a mail reader on your computer, but you can keep everything also in the cloud. Bring your own devices for both student and staff with adequate policies, but Wi-Fi crucial on campus. What are we saying here? That given that all the students and the staff have multiple personal devices, I trust that all students and staff have a smartphone. Almost all of them would have a laptop, some even a tablet, and therefore why not exploit this by providing all your services online and trusting that they will make the best of your services online on their own personal devices. So not providing any devices and leaving everything to them, so you don't have to worry about installing antiviruses on your computers, about obviously upgrading them, buying new ones. But the crucial thing here is that you need to have a good Wi-Fi on campus if your students come on campus, and also for your staff. Administrative staff, technical staff, but also your faculty, your educators, if they are delivering lectures and courses on campus and not from other premises or from their homes. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. So the fifth domain is student information experience and support. And as we all know, this is a very, very key domain for the success of online learning. And they are actually the end users. Therefore, it's very important to provide the right support for them, whether technical, academical, or psychological. As we all know that students went through a lot of stress during the pandemic, especially that they had to shift everything to online without preparation for that. So it's very important that institutions provide orientation to faculty for student support mechanisms, meaning how to refer students to help, whether technical, whether psychological, whether counseling, who students can go to. Or if they're having, let's say, academic difficulties such as time management skills, self-regulation, who should they go to? Institutions should also take into consideration data analytics, as I said earlier, in LMS and VLE. Not only LMS, meaning learning management systems and virtual learning environments, not only to improve programs, but also to find out who are the students who are lagging behind, what material students are not accessing, in order to provide better support to those students. Student feedback in the process of online learning is very important because students are, as I said, your end users. If, let's say, recording instructional videos and posting them for students are not effective resources, the students can tell you this. So you need to gather feedback from students to improve the process of online teaching. Also, as I said, technical and academic or educational support has to be provided to students. Students have to be aware of it. It has to be published, whether in syllabi or on the website of the university, of the institution, so that students can seek the right help. Which also brings us to the next point, support hours. Institutions offering online learning have to keep in mind that students do not have maybe access to campus if they have any question. They need someone to go to in case of technical support, in case of psychological support. And that's why there needs to be a hotline that supports students during studying peak hours. So let's say evenings sometimes, or weekends where students are working on assignments at that time, can call someone if they're having technical issues, let's say with the VLE or the learning management system. Accessibility, I talked about it in the previous domain. Also, accessibility issues have to be taken care of for students with disabilities. The institution has to show evidence that these students are supported using technologies, and the development of the courses and the programs to provide, let's say, screen reader abled and let's say captions for videos. This has to be provided as evidence. Online and blended courses, as I said earlier, should be student-centered. So if we want to enhance and increase the student learning experience, the development of these courses should be interactive, should be student-centered rather than lecture-based. This should be proven and shown in the learning activities that the students have to do, or in the assessments sometimes that have to be more performance-based. And finally, there needs to be a policy for students, faculty, and staff roles in online courses, who support who, when, and how. Martin will provide further guidance to this domain. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you. So, what is our guidance here? It's very important for students to have the necessary support both offline and online. But since we are talking mostly about online courses, therefore the setup is very important to be very good online. This means that it should be flexible, it should be available. We are not saying that you need to have a person on standby to receive emails and chat at midnight. There should be policies, there should be very clear accessibility, opening hours, etc. Okay, but as much as possible, online support for online courses should be student-centered rather than institution-centered. There should be privacy safeguards. Since we're talking about support, there could be some very personal issues. We are not talking about a student asking, why didn't I get my grade in time? There could be issues related to psychological health, very personal issues. So you need to make sure that your policies cover the handling of very personal information coming in from students and how this is handled. Okay, tracking student progress and analytics is a very new thing. It's quite possible using software and using online services, and the potential is huge. However, I have not seen this happening a lot in Malta, not in my previous experience before COVID and during COVID. Why? Since faculty, the organization and students, they are using technology. Technology leaves a lot of digital footprints and is very much traceable. So even if you are using a very simple virtual learning environment, your learning management system, it should be very easy for the institution, for example, to see when the student last logged in, where did it go, in what pages did the student access? Did the student hand in the required tasks, required assessments? Were they on time? What are the grades? At a glance, you can have the profile of the student, the grades. More important than that, these should be analyzed. You have to create the graphs, the charts, to see who is succeeding and who is not. And there are a lot of plugins to the major VLEs, that is the extensions, and there are various third-party services which can go into the VLE and the LMSs that give you such analytics. I strongly suggest that even the small providers, both in terms of cyclical reviews and to increase the success rate of their students, and even for their students, okay, to be of support, to take the necessary steps and intervene before it is too late with some students, that these analytics should be available. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. So the sixth domain is assessment and integrity. And I know that many institutions around the world, not only in Malta, might have faced the challenge in assessing students fairly and in developing good assessments. To begin with, it's very important, like in any regular program, to align assessments with program outcomes. But assessment in online learning cannot only be based on exams. This is not enough. In order for online learning to be more effective and meaningful, institutions are encouraged to provide alternative assessments that are student-centered and that serve as learning tools by themselves. Example, project-based learning, simulations, research papers, and any cases and any other kind of project that is discipline-specific. So these assessments do give us a 360 overview of the student's learning and of acquiring the information, in addition to the summative assessments or to the traditional exams. So in case of traditional exams, which we call the paper and pencil, but nowadays they're more digital, certain technologies have to be used, and not sure if many of you have been using them, but online proctoring systems have become very popular during the pandemic, which you can use in order to proctor your students taking an exam online. Now, these are expensive technologies, and if the institution wants to adopt these technologies to conduct online assessments, which you have to if you're doing online exams, it's very important that the institution first thinks whether there can be an alternative way to do assessments rather than exams. And in case of summative assessments, institutions are encouraged to do summative assessments on campus, only for summative assessments. I mean, like final exams, midterm exams. The university can save on the institution can save on technologies and can bring in students to do final exams on campus and midterm exams as well. Now, assessment as well. We can, through online learning, we can track performance data, you know, with online assessments like Microsoft Forms or any other kind of online assessment tool. You can analyze questions, you can analyze parts in the exam, in the assessment. It's very important that institutions take advantage of these of this data and uses it in a productive way to review programs or to review the teaching and learning process. In addition to that, plagiarism has to be given specific attention. In online environments, we know that cheating becomes very common, right? Cheating in online assessments where students can bring someone to do the assessment for them or can hand an assignment to someone to do it. It's very important that this policy clearly states online courses and is published for students in syllabi online so that students understand what plagiarism is and what consequences will occur as a result of plagiarism. Students also should be taught how to cite, how to paraphrase, and how to not ask for help when because this is considered plagiarism. And finally, student complaints have to be also taken into consideration. Students have to be provided with a venue or a policy on how to grieve about something or how to complain about something in the teaching and learning process that they're not comfortable with, or a grade that they're not comfortable with. Martin will provide further guidance about this domain as well.
Thank you. So, assessment and integrity is crucial. Okay, we all know what happens in the real world, on internet, where everything is perceived to be free to use, where you can actually copy anything you want and use it without taking into consideration copyright issues, integrity, intellectual property. This has become a very strong issue, especially in later years. There have been very strong attempts from Maltese institutions to rein in this sort of Wild West in terms of integrity. However, the COVID-19 pandemic, as Ghania was saying earlier, has reignited the debate about what is the best way to assess students online. So assessment and integrity should be redefined for online. It's not that straightforward to just have the assessment that you were doing in face-to-face settings and just put it online. Okay, exams online are not the same as exams in a room with an invigilator. Institutions need to review assessment strategies and pedagogies. This is a very strong tip that we are giving. Okay, what works face-to-face may not necessarily work online. And by nature, online leads more to collaboration, peer review, peer assessment, okay, working together, teamwork, not having an exam face-to-face, which is usually set to determine whether a student remembers something or not. It is significantly different. And secondly, any assessment of online work, especially plagiarism and collaboration, needs to be properly checked in terms of integrity, because as I hinted earlier, it's very easy to copy. And out there are companies, especially in Asia, that specialize in writing assignments for students, okay, for a fee. And that fee is not very high. Okay, it's affordable for our students here in Malta. So we need to be aware of all these challenges and tackle them in the best way possible. Back to you, Ghania.
Thank you, Martin. I see comments in the chat asking about the presentation. MFHEA will share the presentation with you after our webinar today. Okay, So the seventh domain, learning outcomes. As you know, it's very important for it's learning outcomes, I always say, is the beginning and the end of any learning process. And if you have weak learning outcomes, whether program or course learning outcomes, this will highly impact the quality of the programs that are developed. So it's very important that these learning outcomes in a way reflect online learning and 21st century skills, especially that students are learning in an online learning environment, and the opportunities that they might get from this learning mode are invaluable. The way they can connect with others from outside is key to online learning. So before the online learning process starts, it's very important that programs, PLOs, program learning outcomes, are connected and aligned with the assessments and the course content. And that's why I'm saying if the PLOs are not well written right from the beginning, this might impact the whole curriculum. The institutions also should provide evidence of students' achievement of these PLOs. Evidence could be learning activities, as you know, main projects, assessments, and how these students have achieved these PLOs through these assessments and their grades and an analysis of students' performance. As I said, these PLOs and course learning outcomes have to reflect online learning pedagogy and 21st century skills. In online, students are more independent learners, self-paced learners, autonomous learners. This has to be reflected in the program learning outcomes. Also, follow-up graduate and employee surveys are key to identify whether these PLOs were good enough, were effective. They helped graduates implement what they have learned at the institution in their work, and whether employees think that these PLOs or this program is good enough or needs any revisions. And finally, benchmarking PLOs is very important, looking at other programs at similar institutions or institutions that we aim for becoming big like them. We look at their program PLOs and try to benchmark them with our institution's PLOs. It's very important to provide evidence of this as well to show where your program stands as well. Martin will provide further guidance about this to you, Martin.
Thank you. So, the learning outcomes need to be realigned pedagogically because the route, not the destination, changes. Okay, so since we are saying that we're introducing online courses, and some of them can be blended courses, part face-to-face, part online, the learning outcomes need to be realigned pedagogically. We're not saying change the learning outcomes, but change the route. Which learning outcomes are best achieved in a face-to-face situation, which can be best achieved in an online situation, or whether they can be achieved in both face-to-face and online. We can give very simple examples. So if some of your learning outcomes are the impartition of knowledge, sharing of knowledge, a very simple discussion, having it face-to-face or having it in an online setting, it doesn't make a lot of difference. But if your learning outcomes is based on skills and competencies that need to be tested in an environment such as a scientific lab or an engineering lab with equipment that is not available at home but is available on campus, then that learning outcome obviously needs to be achieved in a physical setting. And this is part of the realignment of the courses and the programs when considering the transition from face-to-face to blended and online. Furthermore, we are suggesting the alignment with MQF and the required technology and human resources which could be missing. So realigning them with the MQF, okay, obviously requires technology. Very simple. If you want to conduct all your lectures online, therefore you need to make sure that your faculty and your students have the necessary equipment to actually follow the lectures and the learning objectives are fully attained. But also, as we've seen in the other standards, you also need human resources. First of all, you need faculty, you need tutors, trainers that can use effectively technology from a pedagogical point of view. You need also someone to give administrative support and also technological support. And we've come to domain number 8.
Which is our last domain.
Yes.
Curriculum and design. Thanks, Martin. And I like this comic that Martin posted in the slide, on the slide. Your subjects have got allocated based on your browsing history, which tells us that learning and content is changing all the time. And even students' needs and student skills have been changing. So a curriculum design has to be very flexible and undergo a lot of reviews, periodic reviews, and experts who take a look at it and give the institution their opinion about what needs to be changed. Because of the current times we live in, because of the changes, whether in the workplace or the skills of the students or the technology. Therefore, pedagogy plays an important role in the curriculum design. In online courses, we cannot transition everything that happens in the classroom to online. I mean, the lecture-based engagement that happens in class does not happen online. And we know there is a whole body of research that talks about lack of student engagement in online settings. Hence, the curriculum needs to be designed in a way that focuses on a student-centered approach, which is usually backed up by proper training, whether for staff or faculty, to design engaging and interactive activities and a curriculum that meets the needs of online learners. Curricula also have to take into consideration applied knowledge and authenticity. We know that a lot of the courses and the programs of institutions in Malta, especially the vocational ones, focus on practical application of skills, right? And we noticed also in the survey that we conducted, a lot of institutions are facing the trouble of connecting theory to practice or doing the practical activities in an online setting. In fact, there are many technologies out there that can help with this part. So proper training for faculty and for staff is very important in order to bring in applied knowledge and authentic learning experiences. Student feedback, as you all know, is important in the design of any curriculum. Always, students are stakeholders in the whole teaching, learning, and curriculum design process. Therefore, there needs to be evidence that students are providing feedback about the curriculum, whether in a follow-up survey, exit survey, or during the program. And as I said in the beginning, periodic reviews are very important, not only in terms of curriculum and content that is being taught in this curriculum, rather also in the way this program is being taught. So technical reviews plus pedagogical reviews plus content-specific reviews are very important for the design of online curricula. Martin will provide further guidance to this last domain. Martin.
Yes, thank you. So to conclude, what's our guidance for curriculum design? Going back to one of the very first things that we said, bring in external help to design review programs at first, okay? This external help can also support you in creating and developing your in-house capacity. But don't be presumptuous. I know that most of you are not presumptuous. You admit where you don't have enough knowledge and competencies, but it's also very important that when you bring in external help, that is the right type of help, and the support is given by people that are competent. Then create internal capacity for the long term. Invest in people. Technology changes, courses change, programs change. People are the key for the long term. This is something that I keep harping on, even though personally many people see me as someone who is always talking about technology and promoting technology. In reality, I always promote more the people behind technology than technology itself. The third one, keep quality assurance in mind when designing programs. What does this mean? Don't be overambitious. If you cannot deliver, quality assurance will catch you with a smoking gun, will catch you red-handed. Okay, so don't overstretch yourself. If you think that you don't have the necessary technology infrastructure to host 200, 300 students in one single lecture, because your Wi-Fi on campus is not up to a certain level, then don't go to that kind of courses and programs unless you upgrade your infrastructure on campus. Even if you want to do it online, make sure that you can provide support to the hundreds of students that, according to your strategic plan, you envisage you will have next year or over the immediate term. Because if you are not well prepared, then all this will reverberate and will be evident when you do the internal quality assurance or the external quality assurance. And the last tip is the review cycle is very important. The review cycle is not just very important because it's good to have feedback of students, of faculty, of all the partners, but also because technology changes very fast. Topics, society changes very fast. If you are addressing a very dynamic sector of society, for example, we've gone through COVID-19, which has changed significantly our tourism sector, for example. Even our education sector, as we are seeing, has gone through a major shift. Now, e-learning, online learning, blended learning has gone mainstream. There is no going back, in my opinion, and the review cycles will make sure that you stay on top, that you are aware of the issues, you are aware of the challenges, but also aware of your achievements, so that you don't rest on your laurels, but you can upscale, upgrade, and further improve and grow organically. And that concludes our presentation. I trust that you found it interesting. There are some comments in the chat. I'm happy to say that there's a positive reaction to what we were saying. Some of the participants actually added to what we were saying. The authority should take notice of these comments. Back to you, Mr. Stockardi.
Thank you, Martin and Ghania, for this very interesting and informative presentation. I would like to inform all participants that we will be sending a copy of the presentation, and the recording of this webinar will be also available on our YouTube channel and on our social media.